I was a broke college student, barely surviving on noodles. Then one day, my aunt forced me to marry a man I had never met, who was in a wheelchair. I hated him at first, but months later, I discovered his shocking secret. He was a billionaire, hiding everything. Before I tell you this wild story, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and turn on the bell icon, because what happened to me could seriously be a movie. You won't believe how it ends. I grew up in a neighborhood where every day felt like survival. You didn't hear birds in the morning. You heard arguing, sirens, and sometimes silence so heavy it scared you. After my parents died in a car crash when I was just a kid, my aunt took me in. She wasn't the warmest person, but she gave me a roof, and at the time, that was more than I could ask for. She worked hard, too hard, and I learned early that life doesn't hand you anything. You either fight for it or you don't get it at all. College was my way out. I thought if I could just finish school, I could change everything. I took out loans, applied for every scholarship I could, and worked night shifts as a cleaner to cover what the aid didn't. My days started at 6 a.m. and ended after midnight. I'd sit in class trying to stay awake, my stomach growling because I hadn't eaten. Most days, I couldn't afford more than instant noodles or a piece of bread. Textbooks were a luxury. I'd take photos of pages on my phone and study during my lunch breaks, if I even had one. I was always tired, the kind of tired that sits deep in your bones. My body ached from working nights, my eyes burned from lack of sleep, and my mind was constantly spinning, wondering how long I could keep this up. People around me laughed, went to parties, posted selfies with their expensive coffee. I just walked past them, invisible. Sometimes I wondered if I was crazy to keep going. But deep down, I knew quitting wasn't an option. I didn't come from money or comfort or safety. I came from grit. And even when hope felt like a whisper, I held on. It was a rainy Thursday evening when everything changed. I had just gotten back to my aunt's place after a long shift. My clothes were soaked, my shoes squeaked with every step, and all I wanted was to sleep without thinking about the pile of homework waiting for me. But when I walked in, my aunt was sitting at the kitchen table with this serious, almost cold look on her face. She didn't even ask how my day was. She just said, "Sit down. We need to talk." I remember the way my stomach dropped. That kind of tone never brings good news. She folded her hands and looked me dead in the eye. "There's a man," she said. "He's looking for a wife, and he's chosen you." I almost laughed. I thought it was a joke. "A what? A wife? Chosen me?" I repeated like maybe I had misheard, but she was serious, dead serious. She told me he was someone she knew through a friend of the family, wealthy, private, and disabled. He'd been in a car accident years ago and now used a wheelchair. She said he didn't go out much, didn't like attention, and wanted a wife who could be loyal, respectful, and quiet, someone who wouldn't embarrass him. I was stunned. "You want me to marry a stranger?" I asked, barely holding back tears. "Why would I do that?" Her voice got sharper. "Because you're drowning. You can't keep living like this. You're tired, hungry, and stuck. This is a way out. He'll take care of you. No more student loans. No more working yourself to the bone." I didn't say anything. I couldn't. My mind was racing. It felt like a scene from a movie, except it wasn't romantic or exciting. It felt cold, transactional. I didn't even know his name, what he looked like, what kind of person he was. All I knew was he had money and a disability, and that somehow that made me the right choice. I told her I needed time to think, but time wasn't something I had much of. The rent was due. My tuition deadline was approaching. I was behind on utilities. Every door in my life was slowly closing, and here she was offering me an escape, wrapped in silence, mystery, and control. Over the next few days, she kept bringing it up. "You think love will pay your bills?" she said one night. "This world doesn't care about romance. It cares about survival. And this man, he's giving you a lifeline." Eventually, I stopped fighting. I didn't say yes out of love. I said yes out of exhaustion. I was tired of being strong, tired of the hunger, the shame, the endless hustle. I convinced myself maybe I could learn to like him. Maybe, in time, we'd figure things out. But deep inside, a part of me felt like I was trading my freedom for a comfortable cage. I just didn't know how true that feeling would become. The day I met him didn't feel like a wedding day. There were no flowers, no music, no bridesmaids giggling around me, just silence, thick, awkward silence. I wore a simple beige dress, borrowed from my aunt's neighbor, that was a little too tight around the waist. My hands kept shaking. My heart felt like it was thumping in my throat. We met at a courthouse. Just me, him, my aunt, and a quiet old man who performed the ceremony. When I first saw him, he was already sitting there in his wheelchair, staring at the wall. He didn't smile, didn't even look at me when I walked in. His face was calm, unreadable. He wore a black suit, very neat, very expensive looking, but his eyes looked tired, like he hadn't slept in years. My aunt whispered something to him before stepping aside, but I couldn't hear. He finally looked at me, nodded once, and said, "Let's get this over with." That was the first time I heard his voice. It was deep, flat, with no emotion. I stood there, trying to swallow my nerves. I kept thinking, this isn't right. This doesn't feel real. This isn't how it's supposed to happen. But still, I went through the motions. I said the vows, I signed the paper, and just like that, I became someone's wife, a stranger's wife. Afterward, we got into a dark black car. He didn't say a word during the drive. I stared out the window, watching the city slowly fade behind us. I remember wondering how my life had come to this so fast. One moment I was a student trying to survive, and now I belonged to someone. We arrived at a large house far away from the city. It was beautiful, but it felt cold, too perfect, too quiet. He showed me to a guest room and said simply, "This is yours." And that was it. No welcome, no conversation, just a door closing behind me. That night I lay on the unfamiliar bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering what I had done. I wasn't a bride. I was just trapped in someone else's life. The first few weeks in that house felt like I was floating through someone else's life. I'd wake up every morning in a bed that didn't feel like mine, in a room that was spotless but cold, like no one had really lived in it. Everything was too quiet. The walls didn't carry the sound of laughter or footsteps, just the occasional creak of wood or the faint hum of wind outside. He barely spoke to me. We had breakfast in silence. I would sit at one end of the table, and he sat at the other, flipping through a newspaper or scrolling on his phone. The only sound between us was the clink of spoons or the distant chirping of birds. I tried asking him questions a few times about the house, about his day, about anything, but he only gave short answers, always polite, never warm. He spent most of his time in a study on the second floor, which he had turned into his personal world. The door stayed closed. Sometimes I heard soft music coming from inside, or the sound of typing. I never knocked. It felt like there was an invisible wall between us, one he had no interest in taking down. So I filled my time with routines. I cleaned the already clean house, rearranged furniture, watered the plants no one noticed. I cooked simple meals and left them in the kitchen without knowing if he'd eat them. At night, I'd sit by the window and watch the wind move through the trees, wondering if this was what my life would be now, silent, still, and unspoken. I tried to remind myself why I agreed to this. I'd look at my tuition balance and unpaid bills and tell myself I made the smart choice, but no matter how many times I tried to justify it, I still felt empty. Not angry, just invisible. Like I was just there to exist quietly. And yet, something strange started happening. I began noticing small things, tiny moments that felt out of place. One evening, I found a cup of hot tea waiting for me in the kitchen. He didn't say anything about it, but I knew it was for me. Another time, I sneezed while walking past his study, and from behind the door, I heard him quietly say, "Bless you." They were small gestures, but in a place so silent, even the smallest warmth felt loud. Still, I didn't know what to make of him. He was a puzzle I couldn't solve. Kind, maybe, but guarded, distant. And as much as I hated to admit it, I wanted to understand him. Not just because we were married, but because deep down, a part of me still believed people don't choose silence unless they're hiding something. I didn't know it yet, but the man I was married to, this stranger I lived with, was carrying more secrets than I could have ever imagined. It happened so slowly, I almost didn't notice it. Tiny shifts, quiet moments, things that wouldn't matter to anyone else. But to me, they were everything. One afternoon, while I was mopping the hallway, I slipped. It wasn't dramatic. I didn't scream or fall hard, but the mop went flying, and I landed on my side with a soft thud. I was about to push myself up when I heard the wheels of his chair rolling toward me. For a second, I panicked, embarrassed. But then, he was right there, bending forward as best he could, offering me his hand. His touch was firm, steady, and warm. "Are you okay?" he asked, his brows slightly furrowed. I nodded, surprised he even cared. He didn't say anything else, just helped me up and rolled away. That small act lingered in my mind for days. Then there was the day I found the art. I had gone looking for spare towels in one of the upstairs closets. The door next to it was slightly open, and curiosity got the best of me. Inside, there were canvases stacked against the walls, beautiful, haunting paintings, some of landscapes, some of people. One of them looked just like me, sitting by a window, staring out, lost in thought. I didn't touch anything, but I stood there for a long time, just taking it all in. Later that evening, he caught me looking at the same painting again in the hallway. He didn't get mad. He just said quietly, "I haven't painted in years, until you moved in." I didn't know what to say, but my heart softened, just a little. After that, dinner wasn't so quiet anymore. We started talking about simple things at first: books, food, our favorite music, then deeper things. He told me about his accident, how he lost more than just the ability to walk. He lost trust in people. And I listened, really listened. It was in those quiet, fragile moments that the walls between us began to crack. And for the first time since I stepped into that house, I stopped feeling so alone. I didn't plan to fall in love with him. In fact, I told myself over and over again that I wouldn't, that this was a situation I agreed to out of desperation, not desire. But something shifted, quietly, slowly, beautifully. It started with laughter, real, surprising laughter. One evening, I burned dinner, completely ruined it. The fire alarm went off, and I panicked, trying to fan the smoke with a dish towel. He rolled in, saw the chaos, and instead of getting angry, he laughed. A real deep laugh that filled the room. I stood there frozen, then started laughing too. It was the first time I'd seen light in his face. After that, things began to change. He started coming out of his study more often. Sometimes he'd sit with me while I read, asking what the book was about. Other times, he'd play soft music in the evenings and ask if I wanted to listen with him. He had good taste, old soul kind of music, jazz, blues, piano instrumentals. It made the house feel less like a museum and more like a home. One night, I was sitting on the porch wrapped in a blanket, sipping tea, when he joined me without a word. We sat there in silence for a while, just listening to the wind move through the trees. Then he said, almost like a whisper, "I'm glad you're here." I turned to look at him, surprised. "I didn't think you wanted me here." He met my eyes. "I didn't think anyone would want to be." I didn't respond. I just reached over and placed my hand on his. From that moment on, something bloomed between us. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't rushed. It was gentle, honest, unexpected. And when I kissed him for the first time, just a soft brush on the cheek, it wasn't out of duty. It was out of something real, something I didn't think I'd find in a marriage like ours. But I was wrong. What we had was growing, quietly, steadily, like a flower breaking through concrete. It happened on a rainy Sunday afternoon. He was out at a physical therapy session, something he rarely talked about but never missed. I stayed behind, curled up on the couch with a book, when the power flickered. I got up to check the breaker and noticed a door at the end of the hallway, one I hadn't paid much attention to before. It wasn't locked, just slightly ajar, as if inviting me in. I hesitated. Something told me this was his private space, but curiosity whispered louder. Inside, the room was nothing like the rest of the house. Warm tones, shelves lined with dusty awards, binders, photographs, and computers. It looked like a forgotten part of his life. And on the desk, open, exposed, was a stack of papers. At first, I only glanced. Then I started reading. Bank statements with numbers I couldn't even wrap my head around. Property deeds in cities I'd only dreamed of. Investment portfolios, business records, photos of him at events, standing, smiling, surrounded by wealthy-looking people. Headlines like, "Young Tech Genius Redefines the Future." "Investor Prodigy Disappears After Tragedy." I felt dizzy. I wasn't just married to a quiet man in a wheelchair. I was married to a billionaire, a man who had hidden an entire world from me. When he came home, I was sitting in the room, holding one of the photos. He didn't yell. He didn't panic. He just looked at me and sighed, like he had been waiting for this day. "You weren't supposed to find that yet," he said quietly. I asked him why. Why the secrets, the silence, the simple life? He looked down, voice soft. "After the accident, I lost more than my legs. I lost my trust. My friends disappeared. People only wanted me for my money. I didn't want to be seen as a broken wallet. I wanted someone real. And suddenly, I understood. This man had built walls not to hide who he was, but to protect what was left of his heart. And without realizing it, I had become the one person he was willing to let inside. After the truth came out, I couldn't sleep for days. Not because I was angry, but because my mind was spinning with questions I didn't know how to ask. I kept wondering, why me? Out of everyone he could have had, people with beauty, wealth, status, why choose a poor, struggling girl who barely had anything to offer? One night, as we sat on the back porch under the stars, I finally asked him. My voice was quiet, almost afraid of the answer. "Why did you choose me?" I said, not looking at him directly. He didn't answer right away, just sat there, his eyes scanning the sky like he was searching for something he'd lost a long time ago. "I saw you once," he finally said. "Long before the proposal. You were cleaning an office downtown. Late at night. I was in the building for a meeting, and I passed by you. You didn't see me, but I saw you." I turned to him, confused. "You saw me working?" He nodded. "It was the way you carried yourself. Tired, yes, but not defeated. You hummed while you mopped the floors. You smiled at the security guard. I remember thinking, She's tired, but she's still kind, still alive inside. That stayed with me. My heart tightened in my chest. He went on. After the accident, I withdrew from everything. I sold my companies, gave up public appearances, cut off friends who only called when they needed something. I lived in silence for years. My aunt, she's the one who reached out to your aunt. She worried I'd never come back to life again. I looked down at my hands, speechless. I didn't want someone who wanted money, he continued. I didn't need a caretaker or a nurse or a trophy wife. I wanted someone who knew struggle, someone who'd see me for me. And when I saw you, I knew. Tears stung my eyes, but I blinked them back. I wasn't looking for love, I whispered. I was just trying to survive. He smiled softly. So was I. That moment changed everything. All the confusion, the frustration, the pain of our strange beginning, it all made sense. He didn't choose me out of pity or desperation. He chose me because in a world full of noise and fake smiles, I was real, raw, unpolished, and somehow he saw beauty in that. And for the first time, I realized maybe I had value too, not because of what I had, but because of who I was when no one was watching. And maybe that's what love really is, seeing someone's truth and still choosing them. Life looks very different now. If someone had told me a year ago that I'd be living in a mansion, waking up to birds instead of sirens, and sipping tea in a sunlit garden, I would have laughed, or cried, or both. But here I am, and the funny thing is, it's not the mansion or the luxury that changed me. It's the peace, the quiet comfort of being seen, loved, and safe for the first time in my life. He walks now, not perfectly, but he's getting there. Months of physical therapy, surgeries, and sheer determination brought him out of that chair and back onto his feet. I still remember the first time he took a step in front of me, his hands trembling, his jaw clenched, but his eyes locked on mine, proud. I cried. I didn't even try to hide it. We've traveled since then, not to show off, but to experience. We've walked on beaches where no one knew our names. We've eaten street food from roadside stalls in places I used to only see in magazines. And we laugh, a lot, at silly things, at memories, at ourselves. But the best part? We give back. We started a small scholarship fund for girls like me, girls with big dreams and empty pockets, girls who just need one chance. I speak at schools now. I tell them my story, and when I see a spark light up in their eyes, I know this is what I was meant to do. And he supports every bit of it, not from the shadows, but beside me, as my partner, my friend, my husband. Sometimes I still wake up and feel like that broke, tired student, unsure if she belongs in this life. But then he reaches over, touches my hand, and reminds me, you earned this, not because you married me, but because you never stopped being you. And that is a kind of wealth money can't buy. Looking back now, it feels like I've lived two lives. The girl I used to be, the one who walked in the rain with holes in her shoes, hungry, exhausted, invisible, she still lives inside me. I carry her with me everywhere because she's the reason I survived. She's the reason I recognize joy when it comes, no matter how quietly it arrives. I used to believe pain was permanent, that maybe some people were just meant to struggle forever, but I was wrong. Sometimes the pain is preparing you for something bigger, something your heart isn't ready to carry yet. And when it finally arrives, it makes every tear, every sleepless night, every lonely meal worth it. I didn't fall in love with my husband overnight, and he didn't rescue me the way fairy tales describe. We rescued each other, slowly, silently, and with more patience than I knew I was capable of. Our story wasn't perfect, it wasn't glamorous, but it was real, and in the end, real is all that matters. If you're listening to this and you feel like you're stuck in a life that's too heavy, too hard, please don't give up. The world will try to convince you that your worth depends on what you have, where you live, how you look, but that's a lie. You are already enough. Even in your brokenness, even in your confusion. Sometimes life breaks you just enough to open you. So the right people, the right chances, the right kind of love can finally find their way in. I didn't think I deserved happiness. I thought I had to earn it, prove myself worthy of it. But the truth is, sometimes happiness shows up when you least expect it, wrapped in silence, in pain, in the face of a man you once thought you'd never love. And when it does, you'll know, because for the first time, it won't feel like you're surviving. It'll feel like you're finally living. So, that's my story. I never thought I'd be the kind of person to sit here and say I found love in the middle of struggle, that my greatest heartbreaks would lead me to the deepest joy, or that the man I was forced to marry, a man I once resented, feared, even avoided, would become the very person who taught me what love truly is. But life is funny like that. It doesn't give you what you expect. It gives you what you need, wrapped in pain, wrapped in silence, sometimes even wrapped in someone else's brokenness. I've learned that real love isn't always fireworks or perfect timing. Sometimes it's quiet, steady, software. It grows in places you least expect, between pain and healing, fear and trust, survival and peace. If you're still in the middle of your storm, wondering when the pain ends, please don't give up. Please don't believe the lie that you're too far gone or too ordinary to be chosen. Because I was just a girl trying to make it through school, with nothing but tired hands and a hungry heart. And somehow, that was enough. I know this wasn't a fairy tale story. There were no glass slippers, no magical transformations, just two people carrying heavy pasts who chose to meet each other where they were, flawed, tired, but open. And that's what I want for you too. I hope you find love that doesn't ask you to change first. I hope you find peace that doesn't depend on how much money you have. I hope you stop waiting for life to be perfect before you let yourself feel happy. Because if my story proves anything, it's that you don't have to be rich to be worthy. You don't have to be whole to be loved. You just have to be willing, willing to try, to stay, to believe that maybe, just maybe, you're not as invisible as you think. If this story touched something in you, please share it. Someone out there needs to hear it just like you did. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and join me again next time. Until then, keep going. You're closer than you think.